The legislative session is over for the year, but there's still plenty of issues facing the state. We'll hear from the Working Families Party on this past session and their focus moving forward. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. New York continuing to see political developments even after lawmakers left Albany at the end of the legislative session.
The state primary elections giving a jolt of excitement with a big upset win of Assemblyman Zoran Mondani in New York City's mayoral primary. We're going to talk with reporter Henry Rossoff on this issue later on in this half hour about the big win.
But first, we're taking a look at some of the bigger items from this week. A group of Republican state senators is urging Governor Kathy Hochul to organize emergency flights to the states for New Yorkers stuck in Israel amid the ongoing conflict. Here's a look at the recent damage in Israel from an alleged Iranian missile strike. The governor's office responding to this, pointing out that Israeli airspace remains closed to civilian air travel, and the state is working to develop a plan to get New York residents out of the area if commercial flights do not resume.
Also this week, New York is leading a multi-state lawsuit against the Trump administration's ongoing federal budget cuts to federal grant programs. The suit states that these cuts are a federal overreach that could cost New York billions. The administration has defended the cuts as limiting mismanagement and fraud.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the past legislative session as well as other big issues the state is currently facing is Jasmine Gripper. She's the director of the Working Families Party of New York. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So for people that don't know, this past legislative session, what were you pushing for? What would you like to see happen?
Yeah, in Albany, we mainly were fighting around the state budget. To make sure we were fully funding programs, investing in education, investing in support services. We were hoping to get more money for the free bus program that Zoran Mondani was talking about, but we wanted to make sure that we were protecting resources for New Yorkers and that was being maintained and not decreased.
I know the budget took up so much of the legislative session this year. Were you happy with what was accomplished?
In the end, the budget was, it stopped some of the worst things that the governor was proposing to do and made some small steps in the right directions of good investments. And unfortunately, in New York State, the budget is never just about funding and fiscal notes. There's also a lot of policy things thrown into the state budget process. And so the governor was trying to move things around public safety and other really hot button topics that had no fiscal note that she was able to get through the budget, but we were able to stop the worst of her proposals. And the legislature had to use a lot of their capital focusing on the policy fights and not really on the budget fights.
Now, what were some of the things that you were against in the proposed budget?
Yeah, so the governor wanted to move things around ways that she was going to have a mask ban that you can criminalize people who were wearing masks, and that would apply to protests. We were able to really put the brakes and limit that, and started upping the charges against people when they're and criminalizing really minor problems and minor theft. And so we wanted to make sure there were caps on not abusing any legal authority. Yes, we want to have law and order, we want to have justice and due process, but we also don't want to misconstrued some minor problems to have major consequences for individuals, and we were able to put a stop to that.
Now, I know that they were on a tight timeline from the time the budget ended until June, when session totally ends for the year. Were you happy with what was accomplished at the end of session? Were there still things that you were hoping to get pushed through but didn't make it?
Honestly, the end of session felt so rushed. This is what happens when the governor has a late budget process by a whole month. New Yorkers are used to timely and on-time budgets. Having a late budget really makes the post-budget session, when we can get policy things really done, and when we should be focusing on policy, it made it deeply truncated. And so it wasn't a lot of time to do some of the major issues. And one of the things that got stalled this year in Albany was protections for immigrant New Yorkers. And we saw recently when Brad Lander was arrested at the federal courthouse. There is a bill called New York for All around us making sure that New York's officials are not coordinating with ICE and that we're protecting our immigrant New Yorkers. And that bill made no traction in the Assembly or the Senate. And while we see there's an urgent need for New York to step up and protect our immigrant communities. The governor also talked about legal defense for immigrant New Yorkers, and there was some bills around that again, she put $50 million in the budget. The ask was for $170 million. And there was just still more we could have done. In this time of Trump and this time of authoritarianism coming in, we want to make sure that all people who call New York home have protections and know that they can be safe here. And there's just ways we can step up our legal defense in New York State by passing the package of immigration reform bills that just didn't make any progress this session.
I know some supporters of New York for All would like lawmakers to come back to Albany and to have a special session and push that through, get it over the finish line. Is that something that you would like to see?
Absolutely. We need to do it today. We can't wait. Our immigrant New Yorkers are here. They're part of the fabric of our communities. They play key roles in their homes and in their communities. And we need to make sure that they know they are protected here. And as we see Trump and his ICE agents are escalating and eliminating due process procedures and really ripping families apart in ways that we have never seen before, New York needs to remind everyone that we are a sanctuary state and that we're going to up our protections and make sure we can do it in the most robust way possible. And the package of immigration reform bills will get us there. And we need the New York State Legislature to take it seriously. The governor has the power to call people back to Albany to get it done if it is truly a priority of hers.
Now, fast forwarding to January, are there any other bills besides New York for All in the immigration package that you would like to see passed next year?
Honestly, it's the revenue raisers. We are in a moment of time where Trump is threatening to cut federal aid to progressive blue states like New York. A good portion of our state budget comes from the federal government, and so we need to protect ourselves. New York is a wealthy state. We have more millionaires and billionaires here than almost any place on the planet. Despite the myth, the billionaires aren't leaving New York. This is their playground. This is their home. The people who are leaving New York are the working families. And so we need to make sure working families can still thrive in our state and can still call New York home, regardless of what Trump does. And so what we need New York to do is actually raise revenue. We're worried that the federal government cuts can come as early as this September. And so we need to raise revenue, and we can do it by just a small tax increase on the ultra wealthy, by closing some of the tax loopholes that we know the wealthy are taking advantage of. And we can make sure we have enough revenue in our state to take care of all New Yorkers. And the sooner we do it, the better, right? When we change our tax code, it takes time for it to go into effect. And so the sooner we can pass a bill to increase revenue for New York. And again, we only need to target the ultra rich so that the rest of us can thrive. A small increase on those who have way more than enough can go a long way for New York. We saw it in just this election cycle, how much the billionaires spent on elections. They clearly have plenty of money lying around, and they could pay a little bit more in taxes.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there, and we'll have to see what happens in the next legislative session. Jasmine Gripper, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Immigration issues remain a hot button issue here in New York, with several high-profile incidents at the state and national level raising questions about immigration policy. We'll hear from an immigration expert to explain the details. If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. Immigration remains a key issue for many, even as this legislative session in Albany has ended.
Several high-profile incidents taking place over the past few weeks at the state and national level, throwing immigration issues into the spotlight.
New York City Comptroller Brad Lander, actually taken into custody in dramatic fashion earlier this month, detained at the federal building in Manhattan for allegedly assaulting an officer. He was later released without charges. He'd been escorting a defendant out of an immigration court hearing, bringing attention to issues some are taking issue with right now with the Trump administration's policy of immigration arrests and deportations.
Keeping with deportations, a Supreme Court ruling will now allow the Trump administration to deport migrants to countries other than their own country of origin. Opponents to the measure argued migrants should have a chance to argue against deportation to a third country if they believe it would put them in danger. However, this will not be allowed. The U.S. has already deported several people to the South Sudan last month.
And Governor Kathy Hochul's immigration policies, including so-called sanctuary state measures, they were front and center in Washington earlier this month. Hochul and several other governors in Washington answering questions from a Republican panel. That meeting featuring a heated exchange between Congresswoman Lee Stefanik and the governor over incidents of migrants committing violent crimes. Joining us now to give additional insight on the current state of immigration affairs, Sienna Freeman Tolbert, a lawyer and immigration expert from Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna. We always love seeing you, Sienna. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Where are we at right now? Things getting better, things getting worse, or is it just sort of like the little thing on the treadmill, going, it's the same?
Oh, John, things are ramping up. So what we're seeing happening right now is that we're seeing more established policies coming out of the new administration, more rules coming out. They are streamlining and figuring out, working out the kinks, so to speak. And so what we're seeing is more detentions, right? So on an average, the federal budget has about detention beds for about 40,000 to 44,000 we can afford here in the country. Right now, we're at the number of 56,000 detainees in the country. So what we're watching in the immigration world, seeing a lot more detentions, but also we're looking at conditions. So we're hearing from our clients about whether they're getting enough food or their medicine and things like that. Those are the concerns that are raising up now because now we're above the normal detention amount of people.
And what are they telling you when you ask them about food, water, space?
What I'm hearing from a lot of clients is that obviously they're being fed, but what we're hearing is that they're not getting their diet. If they have a specific diet, they're not getting, like the vegans or vegetarians aren't getting those special dietary needs. Medicine and care, if they have any kind of ailments, they're complaining about whether or not they receive their medicine in a timely fashion and things like that. So that's what we're really hearing a lot from the clients and from family members and friends.
When you see something like Brad Landers in New York City get detained, a lot of the focus is on what happened with him. But if you step back from it a little bit, Sienna, is there also a chilling effect where if you're here and you're undocumented, you're thinking, wait a second, beyond what happened with that guy who I don't know, somebody was in court, the ICE agents were in that courthouse looking to grab somebody. I've got this legal case against me or a parking ticket I was going to go fight in court. Am I safe going to a courthouse? Am I safe going to a federal building, or am I going to get stopped and say, let's see some ID? Is it having a chilling effect on people?
There's two things that has a chilling effect on. One, we're having a lot of people ask us those questions. I want to go to my immigration court case to pursue my asylum application and go in front of a judge. If I show up, will I be detained? Will that case be dismissed? We're having those questions. It's even happening at the local USCIS office. If you're going in to get fingerprinted because you submitted an application, will you be detained there? These are all the questions that we're fielding. Lucky for us, we are now a more web-based system due to COVID. So sometimes we're able to have web-based hearings. We've been encouraging clients, if they have a criminal hearing, to see if maybe they can appear via web so they don't have to go to the actual building, things like that. And then the second chilling effect is, what we typically do when we need assistance with immigration, we go to our congressional offices, we go to our senators, we go to our congressmen, our House of Representatives, to go and to intercede and to speak to the federal immigration agency on our behalf. And when we see that those congressmen are not being allowed to have access to these buildings or to question what's going on, then we wonder, where do we go for assistance? Because that was usually where we always went for assistance when we had any issues, any delays with any federal immigration agency. And so now it's really concerning as well on that aspect because we don't have those advocates as well.
So how are you trying to get around that?
I can't tell you all our tricks. I'm just joking. No, what we're really doing is we're just preparing our clients. We are preparing applications in advance. We have arguments in advance before we even go to court. We are fighting and filing motions to dismiss to say that this is not legal. We are really doing real legal work, legal documentation to fight what's happening because that's where we're seeing all of the real responses. So you're seeing it in the Supreme Court when they brought back the individual back into the country. You're seeing that in the court. So everything has to be argued. So what we can't do for our clients is guarantee that they won't be detained. We can't guarantee that. What we can guarantee is that we can file a bond for them and argue that they should be released and appeal and keep moving up and up. And that's what we're doing right now.
Is it not helping too, and I've heard some people ask questions to some of the officials, the wearing of the masks, the unmarked vans, that kind of stuff also has a chilling effect, doesn't it? Where if you're not doing something wrong, why can't we see your face? They would, of course, argue maybe they're undercover, but I would think as you're here, an immigrant, you watch that, you're thinking, boy, that scares me a little bit.
And it's very intimidating, right? So, you know, you're on the street going to work. A lot of these actions take place in the morning. Someone approaches you with their face covered and you don't know who they are, right? Especially, you know, I think about a lot of my female clients are complaining. They don't know who these people are, and it's very intimidating. And so it's helpful when someone just has a tag so you know they're official and what they're doing so you can answer their question. Also for the people around them. A lot of people were hearing about it happening on public roads. Kids are going to school, they're getting on the bus, they're seeing this, and they're seeing men or women with their face covered, grabbing people and putting them on the ground. And what are the extra effects on the mental health of people in the community, the people watching this, not even the people that it's happening to, but the people that are watching this happening on our streets. So that's what we've been hearing about as well. It is a chilling factor for the communities.
Do you have any advice for people? What would you like them to know?
What's important to know right now is, obviously we've been saying it all over, is know your rights. Know you have the right to remain silent, right? At the end of the day, people still do, there are standards, our legal standards. You need a reasonable suspicion. You must have probable cause to arrest someone. And so you have to know these things and call an attorney. And most importantly, what I'm telling people is immigration used to be a private, almost private, and you didn't tell individuals about your immigration status. But what's important is that you let certain people in the community know what's going on with you and know if you're going to be at risk. Because right now, it's the people in the community that are raising the alarms when someone disappears off the street. It's them that says, hey, we haven't seen person X in a few days. Where are they? And so they can tell an attorney and we can go find it if they were detained. Otherwise, people will disappear on their way to work or on their way to school if they're over 18. So you have to make sure that people in the community are looking out for one another.
Absolutely. All right, well, Sienna, thanks for coming on. We do appreciate all the insight.
Thank you.
Some are calling it a political shockwave as a relative newcomer beats out an established name in New York politics. New York City has its Democratic mayoral candidate now. We'll talk with reporter Henry Rossoff on the impact this shocking win is going to have on the race. Also, whether Andrew Cuomo is going to stick around and run still this fall.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
I will be your Democratic nominee for the mayor of New York City.
Well, New York Democrats have got their candidate for mayor in a win that some are calling it upset. Here now to break down the impact of this, reporter Henry Rossoff, Pix 11 down in the city. Henry, thanks for coming on.
Great to be here.
I know a lot of national headlines, especially were saying shocker in New York City, but in fairness, you guys had a poll not long before this primary, and you had this thing tightening.
Well, I would say tightening, but this is still objectively stunning, even by the measure of our own poll that we released at the beginning of the week, just a day before Election Day. I mean, listen, every major independent poll had Mamdani sort of gaining on former Governor Cuomo, but still losing to Cuomo in the first choice ballots. The general expectation is this would tighten this coming week when they kind of do the ranked choice voting that we've talked about a few times, and that Mamdani might actually win. Nobody, and I mean nobody, including insiders in the Mamdani campaign I'm speaking with, expected to come out ahead on election night.
Do they feel, Henry, this was really a big pro-Mamdani vote, or was there a lot of, you know what, I can't do it. I had enough of Andrew Cuomo with the scandals and the COVID stuff and the hearing he just, you know, I'm done. I want something different.
You know, it's a little bit of everything, but if I had to bottom line it, I was out in the field this past week talking to New Yorkers. It's like, hey, what do you think? Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, which makes him the likely favorite to be the next mayor just by the sheer number of Democrats down here. And they said, listen, he wanted it. It just didn't seem like Cuomo wanted this. There was an apt headline out, I believe it was in the New Yorker, that said this was a joyless campaign for a prize that he never wanted. And that's what it felt like on the ground. And an analyst I was speaking with says voters, they notice these things. You know, Mamdani ran this sort of joyful campaign. Sure, there were bumps and bruises along the way, and a lot of his ideas are long shots, to be frank. And you know, it's going to be hard to figure out how he's going to do a lot of what he's saying, but he wanted it. He was there. He was connecting with New Yorkers. Cuomo just was not.
I also noticed maybe it was just towards the end of it, I noticed it. Brad Landers and Mondavi seem to be teaming up a lot, almost campaigning together. Did they sort of complement each other where it's like, look, if you don't want me, go for the other guy, but don't go for Cuomo? That kind of, they were setting up that parallel.
Yeah, they absolutely were. I mean, Comptroller Brad Lander faced, to be frank, a very difficult decision. I mean, he's been a fixture in the institutional left, the Working Families Party side of things, an ally to AOC, an ally to the Working Families Party, an ally to all the young and upcoming left-leaning politicians. And he really got sort of swarmed under by this momentum that Mr. Mamdani had. And at the end of it, he had a choice. He could either mean what he said and say, Cuomo's unacceptable, I will support the next best guy. I hope that's me, but I'll support the next best guy, or he could back off and kind of fade into the background and do nothing. And true to his word, he really went all in for Mr. Mamdani, and it certainly seemed to make at least a small difference.
Less than a minute yet. I mean, everybody, including Andrew Cuomo, will admit that Andrew Cuomo's got a pretty healthy ego. Nothing wrong with that. Do you really see him wanting to run again in the fall and do more campaigning and getting out there where it looks that'd be a very tough hill to climb for him? Or does he just sort of, between now and November, say, the voters spoke, I'm out of this?
It really seems like he's waffling over this. There was a report in the Post this past week that said he wasn't running, and aides quickly shot that down and said, you know, he's still considering this sort of thing. But the thesis of him potentially seeking an independent run really got undercut in this primary. It would look something like this. I got the most first-place votes in the Democratic primary, which he did not, but that got passed through this convoluted ranked choice voting thing. He can't even make that argument. He straight up got beat, which is going to make an independent run very difficult.
All right. Thank you. Henry Rossoff, Pix 11. We know you got a busy day. Thanks for coming on. We do appreciate it.
Great to be here.
By the way, if you have a comment or story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN. And finally, on Empire State Weekly, returning to the mayoral race in New York City following a surprise primary win for Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani. Many now likely asking questions about this new lawmaker. Who is he? What are his politics and stances on key issues?
Mamdani represents the 36th Assembly District in Queens and is a member of the Democratic and Democratic Socialist parties. Next week, we'll hear from an expert on Mamdani and look to learn more about this surprise candidate in the Big Apple.
For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you next week.
And don't you forget, you can watch this show no matter where you are in New York State. Here's the full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.